Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive, where we like to take complex reports and break down those insights that you need to know.
Exactly.
So today, we're going to be looking at the global market for ultra-low temperature freezers, or ULT freezers.
Right.
I know you took a look at this report I sent
I
over.
did. Yeah, it's quite fascinating.
Yeah, and I think the potential here is really huge. So
Absolutely.
the goal today is to really give everyone a clear understanding of kind of the market, how it looks now, and the projected growth.
Yeah, you bet.
So really to kick things off, I mean, when we talk about ULT freezers, we're not talking about, just a regular freezer in your kitchen, right?
No, not at all. I mean, these are very specialized pieces of equipment that are designed to preserve very sensitive materials at extremely low temperatures.
Right.
So you're talking about things like, vital vaccines that need to be kept stable,
Right.
irreplaceable biological samples for research, even, cutting edge biopharmaceutical compounds.
Yeah.
I mean, this report really does shine a light on how critical this market is becoming
Yeah.
across so many different sectors.
Absolutely. And the headline figure that jumped out at me when I was reading through the report is that the global ULT freezer market is projected to reach 782.45 million USD in 2025.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets really interesting. It's expected to grow to 324.42 million USD by 2033 with
Wow.
a CAGR of 6.80%. So that kind of expansion, I think, really signals some pretty strong underlying drivers, right?
It absolutely does.
I mean,
Yeah, and it highlights the fact that the demand for these specialized freezers
yeah,
is only going to increase.
across a wide array of applications too.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we talked about the pharmaceutical and biotechnology sectors being major drivers, but
Oh, yeah.
we're also seeing research institutions,
Yeah.
biobanks, even blood storage facilities
Right.
really driving the need to maintain these really stable and low temperatures for preserving these sensitive materials.
Right. It's all about maintaining that very specific temperature
Yeah,
for effective long-term preservation.
absolutely. So to kind of set the timeline that we're working with here, the baseline for these projections is 2024.
Okay.
They've looked at historical data from 2021 to 2024.
All right.
The estimate that we've been talking about is for 2025,
Mm-hmm.
and then the forecast extends out to 2033.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of the timeline that we're looking at.
Okay.
Now, I think it's interesting to talk about the geographical distribution of this market. So the report breaks it down by region.
Yeah.
And in 2025, North America is going to hold the largest share of the global market, so over 40% of the total revenue.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, with a market size of 289.51 million USD.
That's a big chunk. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think are the key factors driving this dominance in North America?
Well, there's several factors that are really kind of all connected. I mean, I think the first one that really comes to mind is just the intense focus on drug development,
Right.
particularly in the United States and Canada.
Right.
And then you've got the increasing reliance on biopharmaceuticals.
Right.
And then you can't forget about the fact that North America has such a strong network of research institutions,
Yeah.
blood banks.
Uh-huh.
You're also seeing a growing emphasis on biobanking initiatives as well.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we can't forget the fact that there's been this global focus on vaccine storage,
Absolutely.
especially for mRNA-based
No.
vaccines.
Right.
Genetic research is also advancing.
Right.
All of this really kind of adds to the need for these ULT freezers.
Right.
And then you've got the government, substantial government funding that's allocated to biomedical research.
Right.
And then, the regulatory landscape in North America is fairly rigorous as well.
Right.
So all of these factors, I think, contribute to that.
So the U.S. market alone is projected to be 228.42 million USD.
Wow.
In 2025, Canada, 34.74 million.
Mexico at 26.35 million.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting to see that North America overall is looking at a KGR of 5.3% from 2025 to 2033,
Okay.
reaching 437.1 million USD.
Yeah.
Canada's expected to grow a little bit faster than the U.S.
Oh.
at 6.1% compared to the U.S.'s 5.1%,
Uh-huh.
and then Mexico at 5.8%.
Interesting.
So those subtle variations in growth, I think, probably reflect the the differences in regional research priorities,
Right.
the evolving healthcare landscape.
Exactly.
So let's shift our attention over to Europe.
Okay.
Another major player in this global market, over 30% of the global revenue share.
Wow. Right.
Their market size in 2025 is estimated at 226.91 million USD.
All right.
What do you think are the primary forces driving demand in Europe?
Well, I mean, it's similar to North America.
Okay.
Europe is seeing a growing need to preserve biological samples. Wow.
The biotech, pharma, and healthcare sectors across the continent are all, contributing to this increased demand.
Yeah.
And again, similar to North America, you've got stringent regulatory requirements
Right.
for handling and storing these sensitive materials.
Uh-huh.
But I think one thing that really stands out about Europe is that
Yeah.
they really have a strong focus on innovation.
Right.
And the report specifically called out Germany
Okay.
for their focus on innovation.
The UK is going to be 38.12 million USD in 2025
Okay.
with a CAGR of 6.7%.
All right.
Germany, as you mentioned, is even larger
Uh-huh.
at 44.93 million
Okay.
with a 6.1% CAGR.
Uh-huh.
And then, France, Italy, Spain, even Russia
Yeah.
are all, players in this market with their own market sizes and growth rates.
Right.
And even the smaller markets, Sweden, Denmark, Switzerland, Luxembourg, they're all showing solid growth. So
It's great.
yeah, it really, I think, emphasizes how widespread this is.
Absolutely.
And the growing need for ULT freezers
Yeah.
across Europe.
For sure.
So the overall European market is projected to reach 357.6 million USD by 2033.
Wow.
So again, showing this consistent and significant demand.
Yeah, definitely.
So now let's talk about the region where the report indicates the fastest growth.
Okay.
And that's the Asia Pacific region, or APAC.
Right.
They hold about 23% of the global revenue,
Oh.
with a market size of 187.79 million USD in 2025.
Right.
But they're projected to have a CAGR of 9.5%.
Wow.
And that's the highest of any region.
That's a big jump.
Yeah, that's really significant.
Yeah, for sure.
So what do you think is driving that rapid growth in APAC?
Well, I think there's a number of key factors here. The rising demand for vaccine storage
Uh-huh.
and biological samples.
Yeah.
The increasing investments in research and development.
Uh-huh.
A big expansion of biobanking infrastructure across the region.
Okay.
And then, we can't forget about the fact that governments in the region are really supporting advancements in the medical field.
Right.
There's a growing prevalence of chronic diseases,
Right.
which is leading to more clinical trials.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you've got technological innovations in the healthcare and life sciences sectors that are playing a role as well.
So China emerges as the dominant market in the region.
Oh, it
At 78.87 million USD in 2025
Okay.
and a 9% CAGR.
Mm-hmm.
India has the highest projected CAGR
Wow.
at 11.4%,
That's a lot.
reaching a market size of 18.78 million USD in 2025.
Okay.
Japan and South Korea are also showing really strong growth, along with Australia,
Yep.
Singapore, Taiwan,
Uh-huh.
and Southeast Asia. So
Yeah, it's really booming over there.
yeah, it really paints a picture of this really dynamic and diverse region.
Absolutely.
And I think, that high growth rate in India is particularly notable.
Yeah.
That's really something.
Because it signifies that, this is a rapidly developing healthcare infrastructure.
Exactly.
And that research capabilities are expanding within the country.
For sure.
So overall, the APAC market is projected to reach 388.7 million USD by 2033.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah.
It's a huge market.
Yeah, really illustrating the potential there.
Absolutely.
So to round out the kind of global picture here,
Okay.
South America has a more modest market share, but it's still noteworthy.
Yeah.
Over 5%.
Okay.
With a market size of 29.73 million USD in 2025.
Right.
And a projected CAGR of 7.5%.
Okay.
The Middle East, accounting for about 2% of the global share,
Uh-huh.
has a 2025 market size of 31.30 million USD
Okay.
and a CAGR of 8.1%.
Right.
And then finally, Africa, while it currently holds about 1% of the global revenue,
Mm-hmm.
it's also showing respectable growth at 7.1%.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, so, I think it's important to keep in mind that
While the current market sizes in South America, the Middle East, and Africa are smaller than North America, Europe, and APAC, their projected growth rates are still indicating that there's a growing awareness
Absolutely.
and increasing investment in the life sciences and healthcare sectors.
Yeah, and I think that's going to translate into a rising demand for ULT freezers in those
Yeah,
regions.
for sure. Absolutely.
Hmm.
So, I think we've established a good understanding of, the global and regional market sizes.
Right.
But the report goes deeper and looks at the market by product type, the
Uh-huh.
degree of cooling that they offer,
Uh-huh.
the applications, and then the end users. So,
Right.
what are some of the aspects that stand out to you in those segmentations?
Well, from the perspective of product type, um, upright freezers are really the fastest growing segment
Oh, wow.
in the market right now.
Okay.
And this makes sense, when you consider, the increasing demand across pharma, biotech, even food,
Yeah.
to preserve all kinds of materials, from vaccines to biological samples.
Right.
And upright freezers offer this good balance of storage capacity and ease of access.
Uh-huh.
And that makes them really versatile.
Absolutely. So the report also mentions the degree of cooling as a segment that's experiencing rapid growth.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so degree of cooling is actually the fastest growing segment overall
Wow. Okay.
in the ULT freezer market.
Interesting.
And what's interesting is that it's not just about, reaching ultra low temperatures.
Mm-hmm.
It's about achieving and maintaining
Okay.
very precise ultra low
So
temperatures.
it's about precision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this really, I think, highlights the increasing need for very accurate temperature control.
Right.
And as research becomes more advanced,
Yeah.
and the materials that we're storing become more delicate and complex,
Yeah.
that need for stable and reliable ultra low temperatures is only going to increase.
Right. And then, you've got things like advancements in cryogenics and the rapid progress in biotech research
Yeah.
are really driving the need for more precise cooling capabilities.
So now let's look at the applications of these freezers.
Okay.
The report indicates that blood and blood products currently represent the largest market share.
Right.
So why is that?
Well, I think that's largely because of the global demand for blood transfusions.
Right.
The increasing prevalence of blood disorders.
Right.
And then, we've got continuing advancements in technologies for storing blood products,
Yeah.
for longer periods of time, and maintaining the viability and the safety
Right.
of these essential blood components over extended periods of time at ultra low temperatures is just critical
Absolutely.
for healthcare systems worldwide.
The report also points out that drug compounds are a rapidly expanding area
Yeah.
for ULT freezers.
Yeah.
So what's driving that growth? Well, I think the growth is really being driven by, the increasing storage demands within the pharmaceutical, biotechnology, and research sectors.
Mm-hmm.
There's an emphasis on research and development.
Right.
Regulatory requirements are becoming more stringent.
Yeah.
There's the rise of biologics and personalized medicine.
Right.
All of these factors are leading to a greater need for long-term storage solutions
Yeah.
for drug compounds.
Absolutely. So when we look at the end users of these freezers, it appears that biobanks currently hold the largest market share.
Yeah.
And this makes sense given, all the emphasis that we've seen on biobanking and preserving samples
Exactly.
for future research and therapeutic applications.
And biobanks are just becoming more and more vital
Right.
for advancing pharmaceutical research,
Yeah.
facilitating personalized medicine,
Yeah.
supporting the development of regenerative therapies.
Right.
And all of this is really fueling the demand for ULT freezers within this segment.
So pharmaceutical and biotechnology companies are identified as a rapidly growing end user segment.
Yep.
And again, that ties in with everything that we've talked about so far.
Absolutely.
And then academic research institutes are also highlighted as significant end users.
Yes.
So I think this really paints a clear picture of the key sectors driving demand.
Right. It's all connected.
Yeah.
Oh.
So now that we understand who the buyers are and
Right.
what they're using these freezers for,
Uh,
let's take a look at the broader market dynamics.
okay.
So the report talks about the key drivers, potential restraints, and emerging trends.
All right.
So what are the primary factors that you see pushing this market forward?
Well, I think the first one is the advancements in vaccine storage technologies.
Okay.
And that's become particularly important in recent years,
Yeah.
with everything that's been going on
Right.
globally.
Uh-huh.
And then the second major driver is just the continuous growth within pharmaceutical and biotechnology research.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, the overall increase in research and development activities
Yeah,
across the life sciences.
absolutely. So now what about the restraints?
Yeah.
Um, w- what are some of the factors that could be holding the market back even slightly?
Well, the main challenge is that validating and calibrating these ULT freezers
Okay.
is a very complex process.
Right.
Maintaining those low temperatures consistently and accurately
Yeah.
requires some very sophisticated technology
Right.
and very strict operational procedures.
Right.
And then the other big restraint is that these freezers are expensive,
Yeah.
up front.
Yeah. They are a big investment.
Yeah.
And that can be a barrier for smaller organizations or research institutions
Right.
that maybe don't have, you know, the capital.
Yeah, it's a big hurdle for sure.
So it's interesting because the report doesn't really talk about,
Yeah.
financing or leasing options, but I'm wondering if that's something that could emerge.
Yeah. I mean, that would make sense.
Yeah, to address that restraint.
Right.
So let's talk about the key trends that are identified in the report.
Okay.
What are the major shifts that are happening?
Well, I think the first one is the increasing demand for biopreservation and biobanking.
Okay.
And as we've discussed, that's a big driver in itself.
Right.
And then the second major trend is just the overall need for long-term preservation
Yeah.
of biological samples across a lot of different applications.
Yeah.
So, I think these trends really show that reliable, ultra-low temperature storage is becoming more and more important.
Absolutely. So it looks like, everything that we've talked about so far is really pointing towards continued growth
Absolutely.
in this market.
Yeah.
So the report also provides some insight into the competitive landscape.
Right.
It sounds like it's a pretty active and dynamic market.
Yeah, it is. It's very competitive.
Yeah.
There's a mix of well-established global players and smaller companies that are more regionally focused.
Okay.
And some of the key companies that are named in the report are Arctico Avantor, as Bill Binder, Cryo Scientific Eppendorf, Esco Micro Evertst,
Wow. Okay.
Hair Biomedical, Helmer Scientific, LabCold Labrepco, PHC Holdings, Sterling Ultra Cold,
Yeah.
Thermo Fisher Scientific,
Right.
and Vestfrost Solutions.
So they're competing on a lot of different factors.
Yeah.
I imagine product features energy efficiency, reliability, and price.
Exactly.
And it seems like innovation is really key.
Yes, very important.
To gaining a competitive edge in this market.
Absolutely.
And the report highlights a couple of recent product launches.
Oh, cool.
So in June 2021, Thermo Fisher Scientific launched their TSX series of ULT freezers.
Okay.
And these new models feature an exterior illumination system.
Okay.
So you can quickly see the operational status,
Interesting.
enhanced cloud-connected monitoring capabilities.
Oh, wow, that's great.
And an improved frost management system.
That's really helpful.
And then in June 2022, Hair Biomedical launched their twinkle frequency conversion ULT freezer.
Okay.
Which really focused on the security of the stored samples, optimizing energy consumption, and providing more environmentally conscious solutions.
Yeah.
So I think those innovations in monitoring and energy efficiency are really significant.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially considering the restraints that we talked about.
Yeah, for sure.
The challenges of temperature validation, high initial investment costs.
Exactly.
The fact that these freezers use a lot of energy.
Yeah.
So having that cloud monitoring capability from Thermo Fisher, I think is particularly valuable.
Absolutely.
And then Hair's focus on energy efficiency probably reflects the cost-saving, concerns of their customers, but also the growing concern about, the environment.
Exactly.
Yeah. So as the market keeps growing, I think we're going to see even more emphasis on these types of features.
Yeah, definitely.
So this has been a fascinating look into this world.
Absolutely.
It's clear that this is, it's not just a niche market.
No.
It's a really important and rapidly expanding.
Yeah, it's being part of the life sciences and healthcare ecosystems.
Yeah, and it's being driven by, all these advancements in scientific research.
Right.
The demand for new drugs, and then the growing importance of biobanking.
For sure.
So to recap for everyone listening,
Okay.
the global ULT freezer market is growing quite a bit. It's projected to reach over $1 billion USD by 2033.
Wow.
North America and Europe currently represent the biggest market shares.
Right.
But the Asia-Pacific region is growing the fastest.
Uh-huh.
Upright freezers and advancements in the precision of cooling are really key trends.
Yeah.
Biobanks and pharmaceutical companies are major end users. And innovation in energy efficiency and remote monitoring capabilities are really going to be critical.
Absolutely.
So this leads us to a question for all of you listening.
Okay.
We've talked about how important biological materials are in research and medicine. So how do you think future advancements in ULT freezer technology,
right,
and maybe even more importantly, the accessibility of this technology, how is that going to shape scientific discoveries and healthcare solutions?
That's a great question.
Yeah, it's something to think about.
Yeah, definitely.
As this market continues to evolve.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, this is great.
And until next time,
keep those questions coming.
Keep those questions coming.